which I don't mind doing, but I'm sure we'll flatten a couple of packages of chips or what have you. So today, for our panel, we're going to have 4 or 5, maybe 4 different speakers, maybe 5 if somebody wants to hop in. We have Michelle Krasowski, who is she's working with the Psychedelic Society SF and also the Internet Archive. Is that correct?
Formerly of the Internet Archive, but still in partnership.
Okay, in partnership. Okay, fantastic. And Layla will be joining us. So that she was speaking earlier with the 920 Coalition. Shaki will also be joining us today. Miss Johnson or Mama. And Todd also will be joining us for our panel. So this panel tonight is going to be looking at psychedelics and identity politics. Looking at why is it that typically when you go to a psychedelic conference, everyone looks like me. Where are the women? Where are the people of color? Where are the indigenous folks? Where are the people that really have been working with these lineages for a really long time? So we're kind of going to explore that a little bit. Everyone on stage will have a little bit of time to share kind of their perspective, and then also share their perspective, and also then take questions from the audience.
I just want to quickly introduce Ms. Johnson.
Okay.
Why she's a part of it.
Hello everybody, so just real quick, right here to my right, Ms. Johnson.
Right above the speaker.
Is that bad?
Just letting you know that. Yeah.
So upon relocating to the Bay Area, I moved into the house where Ms. Johnson is living at, and she's my current housemate. And obviously I told her about 920, and she happens to run some music management, and I just pitched the collaboration idea, and her son Nug Life Productions is going to be part of the celebration afterwards, of fun stuff, I guess. And yeah, I just thought her perspective was really unique, because on the meetings when we were arranging this event, she came from a background where, you know, Logan, Larry, myself were really interested in this movement, and we are kind of like, you know, we know like about psilocybin, blah, blah, the research studies, and then she was familiar with psilocybin, but she came from a familiarity where she only knew like, oh, her son's talking about it, or oh yeah, she knew like mushrooms, you know, like psychedelic experiences, yeah, okay, I'm familiar with that, but she wasn't really familiar with, well, just long story short, I'm sure a few people here probably showed up because they weren't that familiar with 920. What's 920? You know, that's kind of like why I really appreciate her perspective, because I'm sure there's attendees here that also would like to know more information. So feel free to ask her any questions. Thank you. I already went.
Okay.
It'd be great.
Thank you. Okay, I'm usually not in the spotlight like this, but this is interesting. So yeah, I don't know anything except for what I learned tonight, which was awesome. I've never had an experience. I recently did do a peyote ceremony, which was interesting.
That sounds like an experience.
I didn't take too much though. Okay, didn't take too much. What I did take, you know, I don't know if I've really felt anything, but I do work with cannabis a lot, and I appreciate what the woman did say and how we should, you know, think about how we use the words and how we work with products. But yeah, this is really awesome. You know, I'm really big in the 420 movement. Yeah, my son, he's not here yet, but Nug Life, that's his deal. So I'm really in, like, you know, to see all of you, this is just amazing. So yeah, you know, I don't know what else to say to you. I am interested in the experience and in the movement, I guess you could say, but I do think the like the research and the people coming together and the information and on that level, and you know, really acknowledging plants and like someone said, the journey that plants go, like that's really, really, really important, and I'm with that. I fuck with that. So I.
What did you think of before you came into this?
Good. Okay. So psychedelics before. So I only hear my sons. You know, I only hear the youth talk about like I took shrooms, or I got shrooms, or Mama, I got it, or, you know what, I don't know. I see them at the events and they'll say, I'm on shrooms, you know, and I'm just like, okay, baby, that's sweet. But, you know, they're functioning. So that's in a more, you know, social setting. And that's a different experience than what I'm thinking y'all's experience must be different. It has to be, right? Because like you said, they're tripping, and y'all are not so much tripping, you're having an experience, and that's what I appreciate. So yeah, and then, you know, even before the kids, when I was growing up, you're not supposed to do psychedelics because you don't come back. As a matter, I was telling a woman at my job the other day, I'm like, 9:20, you should come out to this event at 9:20, yada yada, and she was like, oh, Miss Johnson. And I was just like, you know, when she's older, I'm like, you look like you did it some, you know? You're not all the time here with us, Aiko, so. And what she said was, well, I did, but I don't think I came down. Well, how long ago was this? And she was serious. I don't think I came down.
She didn't integrate it.
So I was stuck, and I left her at that, and that was on Monday. That was yesterday, because I was just like, wait, I don't know. So I'll send you the flyer, maybe you can come through and maybe learn some stuff. But she said she ain't never came. She hasn't come down. And I'm just like, whoa. So even then, I'm just like, okay, well, that's a different experience. I don't know if I want to have. But I appreciate this platform and all the people. This is just amazing because, you know, it's growing on different levels. Yeah, that's enough.
Hello.
Trinity Green.
Trinity Green. Is it this one?
One in the circle.
One in the circle. Oh. Green.
Hello everyone, my name is Michelle Krasowski and I am I'm a public services librarian by profession and an artist and seeker by heart, and I have had a long, interesting relationship with the knowledge that we do have tools from our plant teachers that can bring us into higher states of consciousness and to be able to connect on different energetic levels with each other and with the universe as well. And my background is from growing up in the 80s in Southwest Florida, which is a very different environment than the one that we have here as far as tolerance within the community, really being able to find your community, and really having the opportunity to know that these types of experiences and teachers should be treated with respect and approached with respect in the situations where we want to journey with them, because otherwise they can have really powerful negative effects. And I've seen that firsthand with some of the people that I went to high school with after we graduated. They haven't made it out, and I have to really believe that if there had been a supportive community of adults that taught them the respectful use of these substances, taught them about set and setting, taught them what to truly expect out of the experience instead of telling them positive and negative types of symptoms that they could be experiencing, rather than taking a more serious approach and focus to the experience to prepare people along their way, then we would be able to prevent a lot of the harm that is counted negatively towards this movement. And that's another reason why I love working with the Zendo, I love working with harm reduction, and really making sure that people that didn't have the support or background going into an experience can still have that space for them, have that space made, and to make it through on the other side and really understand, get a bigger picture of how of what just happened. So, and I'm also very interested as an archivist in older types of drug education materials. I'm starting a little archive of film strips or individual 35mm films and the records and cassettes. And I think it's important for us to really know what people were taught about substances at different parts of our history of education so that we know where to meet them, to understand what information they may have got that was accurate, some information that may not be so accurate. So those are all, that's really something that I feel could be brought more to our drug education type systems. And we talk a lot this evening about plant knowledge, and I feel like the further back you go in our societies, the more you get of that knowledge that was kind of like dissected and put into boxes by the Age of Enlightenment and scientific movements and these thinkers that were not people that were experiencing the work with plants directly. And it's really fascinating to me to think about the lineage that we have in our Western and European societies, that we have to look elsewhere to other indigenous communities now because of the plant teachers and healers that were mostly women in Europe in the Middle Ages who were exterminated for their knowledge by the Inquisition and the Christian Church. So it's really important to me to remember that even though I feel like Western society has this, doesn't have this aspect, the spiritual aspect in these plant teachers the same way that other indigenous societies do, we actually do have it, and we have to remember that it got suppressed, it got killed, and we can bring that back to life because that knowledge is still with us.
Hey, what's up? I'm Tug. I am a psychiatric nurse, a drug and alcohol counselor, and I also throw parties. My focus on psychedelics has also been the focus in the populations that I serve, which are predominantly homeless and marginally housed people with psychotic disorders. And one of the themes that I have noticed, maybe not necessarily I self-identified in everyone, is the disconnect with nature and the disconnect of what medicine we have just in nature itself, and what these plants can give us has been taken so far away from some populations within our culture. And we need to find a way to bring it back and find parity so that the gifts that we've received can be received by everyone. I don't know what the answer is and how to make that happen, but for me, that's a lot what this is about, of why I wanted to be involved with this. And I think that if we all are able to work together, that we can make this happen and bring these gifts and bring this medicine to everyone. And that's pretty much it. So thank you. Thanks for being here, everybody.
And secret guest appearance by ERIE.
So I am, aside from my psychedelic stuff, I'm an outreach counselor for homeless youth in San Francisco. And I think a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in relation to psychedelics. In the society that we live in, it's a huge privilege to be able to do psychedelics. So, you know, if you don't have like your basic kind of bottom line, like housing, food, stability, all of that lined up and taken care of, you're not going to be in a space where you're going to be able to go off and have a deep psychedelic, spiritual, you know, like at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs experience, and then come back and integrate it. You know, you're like thinking about surviving every single day. So that was just one thing that I thought of And another thing is, I was born in Russia. I moved when I was 5 years old with my family, and my family is not into my psychedelic identity, to say the least. And that's also, and that's also, you know, a privileged thing. Like, when people immigrate from another country, they're just also like trying to survive and trying to get by. Like, my mom told me one day, she was like, "Oh my God, I got pulled over by a cop," and I was like, "Okay." She's like, "They said I was speeding, but I wasn't. I was afraid that they were gonna like throw me into jail for years." I'm like, "Do you know your rights?" You know, and for her, like, well, this is better than Soviet Russia was, so why fight? You know, why like be pissed? Why be upset? And you know, especially with the war on drugs that we have in today's day and age, which is such a war on poverty, a war on race. Like, people who are talking about psychedelics nowadays have a level of privilege. They just have to in order to not be afraid for their lives, literally. So, that's it.
Did you want to say something else, or should we open it up for, okay, so please project your questions and however you want to go about it. Okay, I saw a hand back there who was there, gentleman. Oh, okay, Alexis, yeah.
I just wanted to offer a reframe, because I've been involved with psychedelics for a while now, and I lead retreats to Peru where we partake in ayahuasca ceremonies.
What?
And can you hear me?
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Oh, okay. And a reframe I want to offer around calling, I almost said it right there, plant medicines. Calling the plant teachers medicines. I get that the plants help us heal, and they very much do, and they work on a really deep level, but to think of the plant as just a medicine always implies that there's something sick within us, or we are sick, or we need healing. And within my own experiences with psychedelics, I thought, well, going into a plant medicine serum, or there you go. See, it's hard to get away from, but I also think that there's nothing wrong with us, and that the things we experience in these ceremonies are growth opportunities fulfilled. And so to think of these teachers and these experiences as activations, where we remember that we're whole, we're holy, we're complete, there's nothing wrong with us, there never was, and everything that lies before us is just a growth opportunity.
I'd like to speak to that as well, because that's I was very depressed from a childhood of emotional abuse, and LSD really helped me reconnect with the cosmic energy and life force and open my heart center and really make me understand my reason for being alive and my place in the world. So there is very much, I understand the perspective of seeing it as being a growth opportunity and a tool to open doors, and I think that's a wonderful way to put it. I do think there was something wrong with me. I did have damage, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to have that experience. And I've had a variety of different types of experiences on different types of psychedelics as well. But I definitely saw it as a medicine that worked for me when nothing else had.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree, and it's not just limited to that, because if at some point you do all that work and you do that healing, I guess fundamentally my question is there such a thing as a human being that's fully healed, fully complete, fully arrived in their wholeness, and they actually, if that person went into a ceremony, would that be medicine, or would that be activation, or what would it be? And behind that is just my deep desire that each one of us as individuals and as a humanity, we can reach a point where we're no longer sick, where we've healed everything there was to heal. Now we're just online and we're whole and we remember that. That's my dream.
Yeah, I have something to add in that context as well. I've heard from several medicine people who have come from different places. A person from South America, a couple people from South America, I can't remember where, and someone from kind of near Chicago or something, talking about how another way of working with the plants and fungus was a container where there was a higher proportion of like medicine people or people who are really familiar with and could hold their consciousness steady through the ceremony. And so sometimes people would work and do, you know, a specific ritual on the solstice or equinox or something like that. And there are other things that people, when they had more collective focused containers in an integrated cyclic way, that it wasn't necessarily how Westerners often come to it from a personal lens, and it was much more integrated with the elements and balancing the realms and communicating with other, you know, species and dimensional entities, if you believe in that kind of thing, and so forth. And you know, a couple of the people described that what happened when the conquistadors. I don't know if this is true either. It's just like I'm hearing this from people who are in lineages that are older. That when the conquistadors came, the ceremonies that were seen as healing were allowed to stay above ground, but the other stuff was seen as witchcraft, and so people would be killed if they practiced it, and so those were forced to go underground, go into the jungle, often went extinct and this kind of thing. So that's something I'm really interested in personally in recovering, but I also like so seldom hear that talked about in especially the biomedical model of how we're looking at the role that these things have in society and nature, basically.
And looks like we're getting. So if anyone wants to start, so we have about 10 more minutes, a couple more questions. If anyone has any questions, please project, or if anyone has anything they'd like to.
I have to you. I recently finished this book. It's called The Witch's Ointment. Have you read that?
I haven't read it yet.
Oh my
but I just
God.
read it.
It details 1,000 years of persecution of women, you know, herbal and medical knowledge, and how it was consistently, they were consistently suppressed. Some of them had to become acquainted with royalty, I think, to seek protection and all that. Fascinating, kind of historically, you know, accurate.
Yeah, it's
Shocking. Absolutely.
yeah, amazing what alternate history our Western and European society has. If you look at the types of cultures that were suppressed in those areas, and I believe the same thing happened in Europe as well, where if someone was seen as a village healer and wasn't dabbling, there was very much painting certain people as in league with the devil and with Satan, and other people as being healers and helpful, and usually those types of people would be allowed to live after someone else had taken control of the knowledge and the science from them, and it was incorporated into the new rule that was set over the land. But yeah, it's really interesting how whoever the authority with the imposing power is, they have the power to say who's valuable to them and whose knowledge will be retained and who has to run away and hide.
Donald Trump.
I would like to speak on another subject that's related. I have experience in working with subtle energies, and I would really like to offer a challenge. My name is Samantha Sage. I'm going to be here doing blacklight live art throughout the night. And so my challenge for all of you is to think about ways in which we can work with energies without necessarily consuming anything. I love working with black lights because it gives you the opportunity to understand and be submerged in a light frequency that we don't normally get. This alone is a psychedelic experience.
Yes.
So what type of psychedelic experiences do we have just by awakening our pineal glands, tapping into our heart space, and connecting with each other and and nature?
Can I respond to that just real quickly? I'm always fascinated because that's there's a famous Alan Watts quote, right? It kind of speaks a little bit, you've heard the message, you hang up the phone, right? I'm always kind of concerned about that because I wouldn't hang up the phone on my grandma. I wouldn't hang up the phone on my uncle. They continually have wisdom. I might not call them as much, but I'm still going to check in with them to kind of say, you know, what am I missing? You know, I'm coming from this one form. What am I missing? How can I learn from these other things to continue doing the other things when I'm not on those experiences, but to continually to access that wisdom and to continue to pick up the phone and say, hey grandma, how you doing? That kind of conversation.
Yeah, as an artist, you need a canvas, right? You need your pencils, your paper. When you go out into nature, we can start to create art within ourselves, within our lives and manifestation that lets go of these material things also. So these tools are available to us, and if we see them as tools, if we see them as paths and gateways, then we can develop a really pure relationship. Eventually, you don't necessarily need to go down the path. Just by imagining yourself walking down the path, you get to invoke the energy, the quality of that path. You can remember the flowers along the way and the way that it feels, the cobblestones under your feet. And that alone is very powerful.
I think that one thing that's really interesting is like Terrence McKenna. He used to talk like a lot about virtual reality, but he was alive when it wasn't really happening yet. So I was wondering if any of you guys have any like thoughts or ideas on like using virtual reality that we have now with psychedelic drugs and like seeing what could happen with that.
It sounds like another evening event.
I go to the virtual reality meetups and I talk to these guys, right, who have amazing technology, and I tell them, you know, this is pales in comparison to what one can experience, you know, on the DMT or something, and they don't want to know about it. Right? I haven't found anyone that has warmed up to even having that conversation, you know?
Yeah.
Because they want to keep it games, and now there's some biomedical applications, for educational applications, but they've left out the psychedelic part, which is like crazy because what an opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
So when I was
No, I'm sorry.
so working at the Internet Archive for the past 2 years, 3 total. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Internet Archive, but it's basically an online library and archive that its founder, Brewster Kahle, is trying to recreate the Library of Alexandria in digital format. We've been crawling the World Wide Web with the World Crawler and archiving it since 1996, so you can access the history of the web on something called the Wayback Machine. And there's all kinds of other materials available that have been digitized as well. Part of the reason why I left was because I knew that I was not really a computer person. I've known that my whole life before computers became ubiquitous. I used to be friends with people that would dial up on their modems and get online and do programming and all of those types of things, and it was very much like a hobby for them, and it was cool for them to do that and cool for me to like go to the beach and play my guitar, and we had these different roles. But then this weird thing happened where all of a sudden the computer sales people in the internet forced everybody to have to get online, so your life became impossible unless you had an internet connection and a way online. And I feel like personally computers and the internet are limited to the consciousnesses of those who program them, and that limits them to the human species and a very small selection of the human species. And I feel like the people that I worked around who were so into the idea that computers were the be-all, end-all were kind of cutting themselves off below the crown chakra to be connected with the liberating current that binds us all together in the cosmic consciousness. So it was really, I think virtual reality has some really awesome applications as far as being able to display what the programmers' visions that they have during a psychedelic experience are, but I believe that there is so much beyond that our consciousnesses can tap into than what can be held inside a server or a motherboard.
Let's give it time.
I just actually had
I
pleasure.
just raised my hand and I got selected.
Question up front here, go ahead.
So the subject has come up a bunch of times tonight, and I would like the experts in the room to chime in about their opinion of ayahuasca tourism, because from what I've researched, it seems like, it's a very overwhelming experience. It's like best to have an experienced person to guide you through the experience, right? And it seems that a lot of the people who are doing this are charging like ridiculous amounts of money to have you go on these trips. Or like people who are going to these countries where it's more available are going with these, people who end up being non-trustworthy, end up, assaulting, stealing, raping the people who are taking the drugs. So my question is like, how do we go about finding a reliable group of people to lead us through these trips that is financially accessible for everyone?
Pachamama Alliance is really great.
What was that?
Pachamama Alliance takes people into the jungle and works with different tribes. They're very reliable, and they work with people like Amazon Watch as well. And I do it. Alexis does it, and the work that I do is it's just like Burning Man. You pack it in, you pack it out. Don't bring plastic shit in. Don't bring your garbage in. There's a lot of awareness, and I'm sure that Pachamama would have even more. But for me, and their preparation and integration is a part of it as well. And how do we engage with the people who are there, who are new to the whole concept of money, kind of, and they're kind of going through an evolution of, what does money do and how does it take us out of our indigenous practices, and so I think it's right, there needs to be a conversation about it, because it's really easy. There's no regulations about taking people in, and some people don't do it in a good way and some people do, and you can pay all different kinds of money. But I would suggest, if you want information, Pachamama Alliance is very reliable.
Super complex question for sure.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Right now, you can go to Mexico, Costa Rica, Venezuela, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Brazil, even northern Argentina, and do ayahuasca, and probably other places too. It's really global now. Now, I have been to 3 ayahuasca international conferences, the Soga del Alma in Iquitos, Peru. I've been a presenter too. There's a place where you can have an experience with many different shamans from different traditions, where the cost of a ceremony is a donation, $40, $20 if you don't have the $40. Right now, there's a place in Iquitos called Ayahuasca House that Alan Shoemaker started with another, I think a Russian colleague. It's $100 a week to stay there. It's like for the traveler, right? And then a donation for the ceremonies. And apparently it's very successful and they're doing really well. So do your homework. There's so many different places where you can go. I personally know people who lead groups there. I personally know people who have compounds, ayahuasca retreat centers. Some of them are really outstanding. The bad publicity is what we hear, women getting abused and cases. And there are some, and they're a small number, but don't be deterred by that kind of news, you know. There's a lot of really good places to go.
Well, I'll get your recommendations after this.
That's right. And
I will
just
post the
a
internet.
mini disclaimer, ERIE is a 501c3 and we do not encourage any illegal activities. One last real quick question because we're going to have to end up after this. What's one thing that you think we as a culture, as a community can do to grow into this evolution of multiple perspectives, bringing everyone into the conversation, doing the things that we know that are missing, that are pressed, bringing those forward to really engage with some of the more biomedical studies that are happening?
You're asking all of them?
Sure, yeah. It's like a sort of final... or whatever you want to ask. All right.
That's an awesome question. Kind of loaded, because there's different levels to answer that, because there's a lot of different levels of where we are just in this room. From me not having an experience at all and listening and absorbing everything that's being said from different, so how to grow it is tricky, right? Definitely having more events like this, just for me, coming together and being able to dialogue with people is the best way to inform, enlighten, and all of those positive words that we like to use. More. If I could come to this every week, this would be lit. I'd be. But I think it would offer more dialogue, more information. I'd bring 2 or 3 people with me each time, and they would learn and they would get something from it. And then when we go home and do whatever we do, we're going to talk and dialogue and encourage and advocate and enlighten and continue to grow. And I'm probably going to connect with some people here and volunteer on some different stuff and, take it back to my community and my little heathens and, and be like, this is some things that maybe y'all could get into and not just trip, and maybe actually learn. So I think things like this is really, really, really phenomenal.
I totally second that. I think getting in dialogue with people, really hearing other people's perspectives, finding out what is important to them, to find out where those of us with the information can meet them and their information needs. Really making sure that we show others respect so that we can get that respect in return, and just advocate for our viewpoints with facts and let them know, this is an important thing that we feel is missing, so how can we work together to make sure that we understand the reasons behind that and what we can do moving forward to really have a more holistic perspective on these issues.
I think just approaching things in a very non-hierarchical way that is truly egalitarian and reaching out to everyone rather than reaching down to anyone is really important. And sometimes that can be hard, but we just have to really try to do that.
Obviously, it's different for everyone. Everyone has a different life story, a different past, a different family, everything. But using your privilege when you can, if you're in a place to, come out of the psychedelic closet and really talk to people about what your experience has been like, and being real and upfront with people and engaging in dialogue. And, not thinking about it as oh, there's us who have done psychedelics and then there are other people who haven't, because it's not like that at all. There are people who have been on, boat rides and I haven't, and that doesn't make them better than me in any way. We all just have different experiences to offer to the world. It does. No. And also doing what you can to end the war on drugs. We gotta get rid of that shit.
I was just going to wrap it up and thank Kelly for letting us host this event here at Guava, and I would like to thank the beautiful panel participants. and all the beautiful attendees. Thank you so much for making the Mother 920 event a success.
Thank you very much, everyone.